What's up, my friends, and welcome back to another edition of the Run It Back podcast. Thanks so much for hanging out with us once again. Tyler, Zulli, and Frank Klose back with you with another week of Phillies baseball. Thanks so much for letting us take a little bit of a bye week last week. It was our in-season bye last week, Frank. And how about this? We are now on episode number 20 of the Run It Back podcast. Time sure does fly, and we are effectively midway through the season at this point. But glad to be back with you once again after our little holiday, if you will.
Yeah, That's like 5 whole. What's that? 5 months? No. How long's it been? Jeez, no.
It's since like
5.
early March, right?
Yeah. All right,
So
we're in our 5th month.
Yeah. Time certainly flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
And the season is just about halfway over at this point, and the Phillies find themselves inching closer and closer to the Atlanta Braves, who lost again last night. Phillies just 2.5 games back of the National League East standings now, which, like, if you would have told me that, heck, forget a month ago. If you would have told me that like 2 weeks ago, I would have been like, yeah, I know the Braves aren't playing as well as they did out of the chute, but come on, 2.5, that's a huge margin to crawl back from. But they found themselves just 2.5 games back as they continue to, all they do is win games that Zach Wheeler, Christopher Sanchez, and Jesus Luzardo start. They are now 34-17 in starts where those three guys have made the start, in games where those three guys have made the start.
Yeah, the Braves are kind of scuffling right now. They don't know who's going to start from day to day, and then when you have starter issues, you have bullpen issues. They just come hand in hand. And Ronald Acuna Jr., a couple different injuries. They're in a tough spot right now. Austin Riley, I don't know who he is anymore.
Yeah.
They don't know who he is anymore. You know, usually one of the most feared hitters in the NL East. Now he's really quieted down this year. So this is the time. The Phillies really need to strike. I think just to make a statement, it'd be really great if they can catch them by the All-Star break.
So you remember last year, and I don't want to make the comparison right now that the Braves are going to miss the playoffs or anything like that. A lot of baseball left, guys can get healthy. But do you remember last year, there was probably right about this time, the Mets starting rotation issues started to kind of peek through a little bit, right? Kodai Senga wasn't the same guy that he was. Griffin Canning had pitched really well in the beginning of the year, and he ended up with was it an ACL or something along the really pretty significant injury that cost him the rest of the season. And in between Nolan McLean making his debut, Jonah Tong making his debut, in between that, there was a stretch for like nearly 2 months where the only Mets starting pitcher to get out of the 6th inning was David Peterson. No other Mets starter was doing it. Minaya didn't do it. Obviously, they did not have Quintana. They allowed Severino to walk in free agency to the A's. And so they were really struggling with starting pitching depth. And I'm not going to put it in the same breath as what the Braves currently are going through, because when the Braves rotation is healthy, it's certainly a formidable rotation with, Sale at the top. When Schwellenbach is healthy, he's solid. When Smith-Shawver's healthy, he's solid. Now, obviously, those guys are all banged up, but it's kind of getting to a point where it feels a little similar to that, where it's like, as you said at the beginning, when you put a strain on your rotation, you put a tax on your bullpen as well. And their bullpen is forced to throw a lot of innings over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and they really have. And interestingly, too, they've played 4 fewer games than the Phillies at this point, which is kind of crazy to think that they've played that many fewer games than the Phillies. So they're going to have to squeeze more games in, going forward than the Phillies. I mean, four is a lot when you consider how many off days that means over the next few months that are left, right? So I mean, that makes a big difference. So that's worth watching. I mean, I assume that Alex Anthopoulos will do something about it. The trade deadline, he's got some trade pieces. I mean, will they go big and add a Skubal or something like that? I think that's a reality. He's going to fix some of these problems. So I think right now the Phillies really need to take advantage while perhaps the schedule's a little bit easier on the Phillies, and while the Braves are kind of scuffling. So if they can catch them in the next few weeks, I mean, I think that would be they'd be ready for battle come the trade deadline. Then it'll be a matter of who picks up what at the trade deadline to fill their holes.
And I think when it comes to the trade deadline, there's going to be a bunch of teams that are in the spot that the Phillies are probably in, that are looking for a middle of the rotation guy, somebody who could maybe, I don't know, masquerade as a 3, is probably more like a 4, but could give you some depth, give you some innings. For the Braves, like, there's a realistic chance that they go get a legit 1 or 2 and a 3 or 4 type of guy because of the injuries that they faced this year. And, if you can get to the postseason relatively healthy, you would have a extremely formidable rotation, and you could set it up even if you don't win the division, being the Braves. If you don't win the division, you could set it up in a way where you feel comfortable with 2 or 3 different guys starting a wild card game, just like the Phillies do, right? Like the Phillies, if they're playing in a wild card series, while you'd love Christopher Sanchez and Zach Wheeler in those 2 games, if it's Wheeler and Luzardo, if it's Sanchez and Luzardo, if it's Wheeler and Sanchez, any one of those combinations, you're feeling really good about the first 2 games. And I think the Braves could do the same thing. But you're right, at this moment for the Phillies, like as crazy as it sounds to only be 2.5 back, when you have an opportunity to play some teams that you are better than, even teams like I think the Pirates, a really, really strong offense. Some good starting pitching. I thought Bubba Chandler was really good last night up until that last inning. Their bullpen has really struggled against the Phillies. Their bullpen has struggled, period, I should say, this season. And, it's a team that you are better than, even though they have a prolific offense. You're better than them. Stacking up series wins and being able to do that. I know it's a 4-game set, but like being able to jump up, potential to jump up 2-1 this week or tonight in this series. These are the types of games that really do make a difference.
Yeah, and the Braves are facing St. Louis right now. They're playing very, very well. They've played them for another series before the All-Star break. So, and then they have to face the Mets and Pirates. And the Mets, when the Phillies played the Mets, you can tell you can't just write them off. But as many issues as they have, but I mean, they could be some competitive games for the Braves. So, I mean, the Phillies right now, they really should dig in and take advantage of this. So I just think it would make a nice statement if you get to the All-Star break and they're either even with the Braves or if they could inch ahead, that'd be even nicer.
There is I think they're at this point, and I will be the first to tell you that like 2 months ago, I would have told you were insane to say this. There's a very legitimate chance the Phillies win the National League East at this point. I know there's a lot of baseball left. Anything could happen. But the way that they've fought themselves back and won series that they're supposed to, even in that stretch, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago when they were winning games like 3-2 and 2-1 and 1-0, and we were like, man, this offense might not be sustainable. They were winning the games, and that, I guess, is probably the big takeaway. But now they're starting to put some offensive productivity on the board, some crooked number innings. It was 2-0 in the 7th inning last night. They win that game by, 5-0? At the end of the game, they win that game last night. They're putting up runs on.
Don't forget that late homer. So
right, and listen, sometimes you get the late inning. Sorry, it ended up being 8-0. I think.
Yeah, right. That late Trey Turner homer
because then the Pirates brought a position player into pitch.
Yes,
but you end up starting to get some of these games where you're, starting to put this thing together a little bit, and offensively, you're starting to see some guys maybe turn the corner a little bit. I'm not ready to say Trey Turner's back, but Trey Turner has had a good 2-week stretch. Justin Crawford's June has been really strong. He's hitting .307 in the month of June. He's risen his average almost 27 points in the month of June. Derek Hill has had some really important spots for this team, both offensively and defensively. They still have holes. There's no question about it. But what they've done is tread the water enough to get to this point where now you're in striking distance, and now you can almost look at it and say, well, it's an 81-game season. If we can win an 81-game season, we can win the division.
Yeah, and by the way, I did some numbers yesterday. This was before last night's games. The Phillies won one and the Braves lost one. But since the point that Rob Thompson was fired, the Braves have played at a 547 clip. The Phillies have played at a 655 clip. Well, if they can sustain those paces for the end of the season, the Phillies win 97 games. if they can play at the same clip that they've played since firing Rob Thompson. Now that's a big ask, but it kind of shows you the trajectory of where the team's going. And the Braves, if they're playing at the clip that they've played since then, they will finish with 94 wins. So, I mean, if you're projecting out at least where they've been, now you could look at an even smaller sample size and say, hey, look at the month of June where the Braves were underwater for the month of June. Of course, the Phillies 17-9 in June. So, but yeah, there's a lot of baseball to be played, but it seems like it's trending in the right direction.
Speaking of the month of June, do you know who ended up being the best team in baseball in the month of June?
The Miami Marlins.
by a lot. I think they were 20-6, if I remember correctly, in the month of June, and I believe the Phillies handed them 2 of those 6 losses.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you know what? You saw a lot of raw talent on that Marlins team when the
Yeah,
Phillies played them. I mean, they're kind of breathing down the Phillies' neck. I don't think that that's something that a lot of people realize because they haven't really looked at the standings. But yeah, they took last night against the Rockies 14-3. So
jeez.
they're going to have some really good days. I think they're going to have some opportunities. I think when you have the right pitchers on the mound to really dominate. They don't have the depth, so I feel like they're going to hit a wall at some point. But
Right.
hey, they're in Colorado right now. Then they go to Sacramento to face the Athletics. I mean, I think they could pick up some wins. They could be a little closer to the Phillies and Braves come the All-Star break than you would think.
Yeah, and it's funny because it felt like that team like that. I don't want to call them a surprise team because they've been building for forever, but it felt like that team might be the Nationals in the division because of how good their offense is. But the Nationals bullpen is so bad. I mean, it was on full display last week. We're talking about, like the comparisons of the 2020 Phillies bullpen and one of the worst bullpens ever. That Nationals bullpen is just horrific. And it's probably going to cost them a postseason run because their offense is legit. James Wood, CJ Abram, Nathaniel Lau, like this is a legitimately good. Curtis Meade's having a good season. Like this is a legitimately good Washington Nationals offense, and their bullpen's so darn bad that like they might miss the playoffs because of the bullpen.
Yeah, I mean, I will say too, the Phillies did take advantage of Daniel Lord, who's had a really nice season. He was usually the one bright spot, but you know what? When you overwork your bullpen, it catches up to some of even the best performers.
Yeah,
So I mean, that's just the reality of a bullpen that's overtaxed. So yeah. And by the way, the Nationals have enough offense. They're gonna hang around so that they're not gonna be. It's not gonna be lopsided. The Nationals do have a winning record as of right now. Us recording this, the only one in the NL East without a winning record is the Mets. But I think they're going to surprise some people. So the Phillies with those 3 wins. I mean that they were playing a competitive team. I think we can't dismiss those wins the Phillies had against the Marlins and the Nats. Just saying, oh well, it's just the Marlins and the Nats. So both of them are significantly improved from what we're used to.
So, real quick before we get into our next, I just wanted to ask you this really quickly. Obviously, we have a month until the trade deadline. Is there a chance that Washington is a buyer at the deadline?
That would be interesting. I mean, they have cashed out a lot of their assets the last few years, so
Right.
that gives them prospect capital where they could buy. I'm just wondering if the development of all those young names you just mentioned, if they're not still a little raw, you want them to maybe you wait for next year to be your buy year. Maybe they try to improve this off season and then really well again. I always say next year, but gosh, this where the CBA is going, I don't know where next year is going. So, but I think that's a real question mark right now. What's going to happen? What's going to happen with the CBA?
Yeah.
But I mean, that could change their thinking. That could change a lot of teams' thinking this year. I mean, if I'm the Phillies, I would really go for it right now because, one, that you see their core aging, and two, that you don't know what's happening next year. For a lot of these other teams that might be on the bubble, they might say, well, let's wait till we know what's happening before we
Sure.
go crazy. So I think that could be a big thing to watch here. Or is that going to affect trade deadline decisions?
So let's talk about one area in which the Phillies are likely to need to make an acquisition at the trade deadline or closer to it. And we talked a little bit about it at the beginning of the show. It's the middle of the rotation because there's no question about it that Christopher Sanchez, Zach Wheeler, Jesus Luzardo give you a chance to win every single night. And I know that Jesus Luzardo has had an ERA that was in the 4s for quite some time. And much like last year, it was product of a rough stretch. He's been really, really good over the last 2 months or so. So you have 3 really formidable starting pitchers at the top of your rotation. But after Andrew Painter's demotion, the next step is Aaron Nola's continued struggles. Now, I went back and looked at it over the last 2 years because he has now made 17 starts this year. He made 17 starts last year. In his last 34 starts over the last 2 years, Aaron Nola has pitched 179 in the 3rd innings. He's going to give you, he's going to get you somewhat deep in the game. So I'm not going to complain about that. What I am going to complain about is the 120 earned runs that he gave up, which equates to a 6.02 ERA, and the 197 hits that he is allowed in 179 and a third innings. Now, we know that Aaron Nola is not typically a high walk guy, but his whip is pretty astronomically high because he's given up almost 200 hits in those 179 and a third innings pitched. Aaron Nola is owed 4 more years and $100 million on his contract. He's not going anywhere. You can make decisions on a sixth, going to a 6-man if you had the depth to do it. You can make decisions on him being a bulk guy and using Ron Hell and acquiring another starter and piecing it together. You have decisions that you can make, but the reality is Aaron Nola, unless he decides I don't want to play anymore, Aaron Nola is not going anywhere. So if you were Dave Dombrowski, if you're John Middleton, if you're Don Mattingly, what's kind of the trajectory for you for Aaron Nola over the next 10 or 12 or 15 starts or whatever it comes out to be?
If it's me, I first say, you look at his velocity last year, this year, it's down from 2024 significantly, right? And that's something you acknowledged the other night on X with that post. So the first thing I would do is see if there's something there that's related to that. Is there anything they can do from a strength and conditioning viewpoint? Is there anything they can do with his arm angle? I don't know. You got to find out where he's going to be. If this is what he is, then that gets to step 2. Then you come up with an accurate game plan based around that. I think he's a little bit affected by, and as you had that chart you posted the other night, where his ball goes. Too many balls straight down the middle. Now, when Aaron Nola's been successful, he's been able to paint around the strike zone. And I think that the ABS has kind of freaked him out from throwing around the strike zone. Because a lot of the pitches he used to get for strikes are now getting overturned by ABS. Now, if it's me, do it. Burn those. At some point, they'll burn those ABS challenges, right? I would just go for it, right? Don't throw the ball down the middle because you're afraid to walk somebody, right? Because you see what happens when that happens. And I think that as you look at his numbers, there's like he has like a 909 OPS against him when he pitches through a lineup the second time. After they see him once, they're like ready for it. So I think that they really need to come up with a good game plan that reflects what he can do. And by the way, too, when he pitches from the stretch, that's when he's particularly bad. He has an OPS against over 1,000. So I think who was it? I think it was Ruben Amaro Jr. said, well, yeah, every time he's pitching from the stretch, he's facing Aaron Judge. That's the way it's become, which is
right.
pretty significant. So just come up with a better game plan, right? Hell, abandon the stretch. If it's not bad right now, abandon it till you figure out the rest, right? Because his windup is seeming to be what works for him when he's working.
Now, obviously, these are very, smaller sample sizes compared to bases empty. But to your point, with a runner on first this year, he has 16 innings pitched worth of outs. He's faced 73 batters. He's given up 25 hits, including 5 home runs. He's also walked 5, which means he's allowed 30 base runners of those 73 to get on. That's a 1.88 ERA. And again, I know the outs recorded is a much smaller sample size than the 49 and a third that he's gotten out with the bases empty. But you're talking about your whip rising between nobody on and just a runner on first, your whip rising almost a half a point. And I know that there is certain guys like to pitch from the windup. They're more comfortable. Certain guys have, I think there's an era of baseball now that has almost abandoned the windup a little bit, or at least the big time movements of the windup for much more compact, much more simplistic windups that are kind of just step, pivot, and go. And it takes a lot of that like herky-jerky movement out of your motion. And I get why they do that. I look at Aaron Nola and it's almost inverse, where he is more comfortable with his typical windup. And he has an elongated windup, not Dontrelle Willis elongated, but it's more elongated than a lot of pitchers that you see. There's a high leg kick. There's that Aaron Nola turnover that we all, you've seen for the years. He does that, routinely. I don't know what his disconnect is when he gets into the stretch, other than what you just brought up, is he's so adamantly trying to not walk hitters, which I think is a good trait up to a certain point. But you can't, if you're going to live on the outer edges, like you said, just live on the outer edges. And I'm not saying fill the bases up with walks, but if you're going to live there and that's kind of how you made your money and that's how you've been successful in baseball, especially with diminished velocity, there's a very slim difference between purposefully pitching out of the zone, because he's only in the zone at about 48% this year, purposely, or at least in the last couple of starts, purposely pitching out of the zone and being uncompetitive with your pitches out of the zone. And when you are uncompetitive with your pitches out of the zone, that does what you've seen over the last couple of starts, is force you back into the zone. And your velocity is not there to pitch back into the zone. And so I agree with you. And you almost basically just kind of have to live by the sword and die by the sword, or in this case, live by the ABS and die by the ABS.
Yeah, and honestly, too, you get him through if you fix the other rotation slot. If he gives you 4 and then you need to pull him, fine. I felt that his last start they left him in perhaps a little bit too long. Why? Because the bullpen was taxed. I mean, you saw the Phillies acknowledge that they put Jesus Luzardo between the 5th starter spot and Nola just to try to help the bullpen a little bit. But like you saw again yesterday, I mean, you had another addition to the bullpen from the 476 back and forth express, right? You have Trevino come up and replace Sugar just because you saw what happened to Sugar. I mean, he was pitching in a spot he really shouldn't have pitched in. He's been overexposed. He did a lot of nice things for the Phillies this year, but he got to the point where he was pitching too much and in spots that aren't for him. And no, that's a direct effect of having 2 times in your rotation where you have to have the bullpen throw too many innings. So
yeah, I mean, I think you're looking at it from Sugar. You're looking at it from Seth Johnson. I will
Max
say,
Lazar, there's just so many of them. They're just flipping back and forth now because they get overexposed, and then you got to call up the next guy.
So obviously now Backus is back in the bullpen. You got another lefty, a guy who's got some funky stuff. We'll see where he gets slotted. I will say, continued praise to Tim Meza, who has done every role imaginable in this year's bullpen. And I think he's really stepped up to the challenge. And, he's not going to be the guy that he was dominating early in the season. But if he lives in the 3s for an ERA for a guy that, is the front end of your bullpen, that's somebody that you can trust down the stretch, because, the reality is they need another arm in the bullpen. They're going to need some help. And as the season unfolds, while they continue to win games, and that's really all that matters, is winning games, as the season unfolds, it's proving to us that they need a lot of different pieces at the trade deadline. And I don't think they're going to be able to address all 4 or all 3 or however many pieces that you need. But they are going to have to make some concerted efforts to acquire, at least one pitcher, whether it's a starter or a reliever, at least one bat, and I don't know what type of leverage bat it's going to be, but I think another acquisition is coming. Like, they have very minimal assets to move at the, especially at like the AA level to move, that teams are going to want back in exchange that isn't Gage Wood. They're going to end up having to probably move either Ramon Marquez, which really sucks, or Matthew Fisher, who they're really high on. They're going to have to move one of those types of guys, Kate Obermueller, to get somebody that can help this team this year.
Yeah, and probably Dante Nori, who's opened some eyes at the World Baseball Classic. He's an option. I mean, I think they'd love to have Ron Escobar in-house because they're going to need some infielders in the near future. But, they might have to swallow hard to do it. And then that's the problem when you get to this point. I mean, the Phillies did a really good job of rebuilding after a failed rebuild. But the only way that they could do it was spend themselves out of it. And so you're at this point now where you sign a lot of these free agents, you give up the draft picks. Then you make trades for some of them. You trade the draft picks that you have been bringing along, and so kind of leaves you with a bare system. But you know what? I think that again, back to the CBA and a potential lockout, maybe some of the lower level prospects will be more appealing to teams this year because they know they can work with them next year if there is a major league lockout. And get something out of it later when baseball resumes. So I do think the Phillies have enough. You named enough pieces, and you throw in Dante Nori. I wouldn't make Escobar untouchable. I think they've got some. I think they have the ability to make some trades. I mean, I think we're in an era too where nobody's trading their top prospects, right? So, the last time you saw someone actually do that was when the Nationals traded Juan Soto to the Padres, right? And that's how they have 2 of their top players. But trades like that are so rare anymore And I don't think the Phillies are adding a Juan Soto type superstar that would require that to get them what they need. So I think they do have enough pieces to get what they need to do. And you know what? I hate to say it because, they've invested so much to this point, but I don't, I'm a big believer in the sunk cost fallacy. But if you need to trade Andrew Painter, trade Andrew Painter. I mean, this is you can't let this whole core not win because you're so worried about Andrew Painter.
I would guess if you truth serumed Dave Dombrowski and the staff this week or this month, and you ask them truthfully, how many guys are untouchable in your farm system at this trade deadline? There's a real chance the answer might be one.
Gage Wood.
I think it's Gage Wood. I think that's
so Aiden Miller's on the table for you now.
Well, not personally, because I still think like if he can get healthy and this back thing can alleviate itself a little bit, I still think that that's a guy that they really like, that I really like. And I still believe that Aiden Miller is a viable piece if he's healthy, right? And that's a big if, because this thing is weird, right? As you brought up a couple weeks ago, now it's more about pain management than it is about pain, alleviating, right? It's just about how much can you tolerate and how does your back feel on a given day. If he's healthy, I still believe that he is going to be a good Major League Baseball player. And I think that that's the type of guy that I would not like to move. I would bet you if you asked them truthfully, that they had a truth serum, lasso or the lasso of truth from Wonder Woman, right? I would bet you they'd say one. I would bet you they'd say Gage Wood, and they'd probably say, well, we really like Aiden Miller. We still believe in Andrew Painter. We really like Aaron Escobar. They'll give you some names that they really like, and they would be hard-pressed to move. But I think at this juncture, with the aging of the core, if you said how many are you just flat out no hanging up the phone, Gage Wood is the only one.
Yeah, I mean, I think they drafted him because they figured they could use him sooner than later. I mean, it was kind of like the Nola draft pick. Like they drafted Nola. They actually thought Nola would be a number 3. He actually ended up being better, but the idea was they could plug him in sooner than later.
Right.
Gage Wood, they want to be able to plug in sooner than later. That's why they drafted a college player with that much experience. And hey, and I think it's even possible you see him in the bullpen in September if needed. But
And that's why I think so. The Phillies take draft 36 this year because of the drop down 10 spots. There's going to be a lot of really good players that are off the board. Now, baseball's draft is such a crapshoot, but I think the Phillies have one of two options here. I think that they might go in that Aaron Nola boat where it's like, now they're not, what they draft Nola, 8th or 10th or whatever it was. It was like pretty high in the first round. We're talking about drafting 36th. A lot of the best players are going to be off the board. But I think they might have a similar mindset. Now, they may not get Gage Wood upside, but like you might go after a guy who was a 22 or 23-year-old junior, senior type of pitcher who's been in the college game for a while, could quickly rise through the ranks to get that kind of reinforcement. Like there is a chance. Like there's a couple of guys I really like. A pitcher out of Liberty named Ben Blair. Probably would have to overdraft him a little bit, but I think his floor is really, really high. Like, I could see that being the case again, where they draft for maybe not the highest of ceiling, but the highest of floor that they could possibly take.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you there. And then all their prospects are so far away. I mean, you look at the likes of Renteria. I mean, he's not expected to land in the major leagues till 2031. I mean, that's so far away. So I do think they need some more options that can move up a little bit quicker in the system. But for me, just back to Aiden Miller for a second, I think they'd be selling too low if they traded Miller. So that's why I wouldn't trade him at this point, because you need somebody to work out. I mean, that's relevant to this conversation, right? You need somebody from the system to work out, and if he were healthy, I mean, he could be up in the major leagues right now for all we know. But he's got to get himself healthy right now. I think other teams would be very hesitant to really give value. Because the back is very, very tricky. You don't know. Hey, honestly, that's the back that probably scared the Phillies from re-signing Ranger Suarez. So backs are tricky.
And you brought up a lot of teams don't like to move their top prospects. I think it was maybe 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. I don't think there was a single top 100 prospect that got traded at the deadline. Now, last year, because the AJ Preller and the Padres are psychopaths and they don't care. They take like the Les Snead approach to prospects. They traded Leo DeVries, who was a top 10 prospect in baseball, to acquire Mason Miller, who, for the most part this year has been untouchable. I don't think you're going to see a Leo DeVries type prospect get traded because for several reasons. One, I think teams are very hesitant to make that type of move, as you said, unless you're getting Mason Miller or Juan Soto back. And two, the impending work stoppage, I think it's going to throw a wrinkle into a lot. Like, I think you're going to see a lot of veterans get traded, but you're not going to see a lot of top prospects get traded. Like any team that can get off of a big contract, they're going to do it. And they might do it for 80% of face value. But I don't think they're going to do it. I don't think teams in return are going to give up, 21-year-old, pitching prospect who's about ready to make his debut. I don't think teams are going to get rid of 18-year-old shortstop prospect who they really like, who's in high A and is elevated quickly through the system. I think you see a lot of trades this trade deadline, but I think the value of those trades are going to be very specific. Like, they're going to be very particular in spots, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, remember the owners want a salary cap, right? So I think they're going to be worried about salary obligations. So I mean, I don't know if they actually think they're going to get their way with the salary cap. They probably do, which is why there's probably going to be a work stoppage. But they're probably going to be very wary on taking on salaries. So I mean, we don't know what that will mean for the future if all of a sudden a cap comes in and you're over it. I mean, the Phillies are probably one of the teams where they probably would be over it at first, and then you have to figure by the time you navigate all the exceptions, like, the NBA has all, like, you can have the mid-level exception just to bring in a mid-level player. But like, I who knows where that's going? I think they're talking that language, but it'd probably be wiser to be below the salary cap potential limit if I'm a lot of teams. Now, Phillies, maybe if they're going for broke this year, they might be one that says, oh, whatever, we'll figure it out later.
Well, especially too, considering like the money next year shifts around a little bit. Like, the $18 million for Taijuan Walker comes off the books, but it goes right to Jesus Luzardo. So you could 1-to-1 that, and I think that that's a move that fans would be okay with. $20 million from Nick Castellanos is cleared. That's a significant chunk of change. Jose Alvarado's $9 million is off the books. I'm not sure the Phillies re-sign Jose Alvarado this offseason.
I'm not sure either.
That's $9 million. And then you look at it the next year down the road. Zach Wheeler's 42 or 45 or whatever it is. If he wants to play again, they're going to re-sign him. I don't know if he wants to play again or not, but my guess would be he probably doesn't get $40+ million a season again. It's probably less than that. So you're thinking about maybe saving $8, $10, $12 million along the way. You could start to look at the money from a year to 2-year, financial window. And the Phillies are starting to get a little bit of flexibility in the next couple of years. I wonder if they say 2027, if there's a season, bleep it, spend the money, and then we can kind of reset in 2028.
Yeah, I mean, this is their window. I mean, even John Middleton. I mean, he's not getting much younger, right? I mean, he wants to win, right? I mean,
sure.
Can he sit through another rebuild like the mid 2010s? Of course, it went nowhere. But like that was
I can't.
It took. I don't
got that kind of time in my life anymore.
Oh my Lord! From when they finally admitted that they should rebuild in 2015, they didn't win again until 22. Really, so like, yeah. I mean, that's a long time. I mean, so he wants to win. So I mean, this is it. I mean, Kyle Schwarber's defying gravity and logic and continuing to play like this in his late age. So he's like Big Papi 2.0, right?
Sure.
Yeah, a lot of parallels.
Really, the only comparison of modern era is David Ortiz to what Kyle Schwarber's currently doing.
Yeah, both DFA'd at various points in their career, right? So but Bryce Harper, he's giving them tremendous production this many years into a 13-year contract. I mean, JT Realmuto, of course, we know he's slowing down more and more. This is it. This is the time to do it. I don't know that you can just think, we'll worry about it. Try again next year. I mean, this is there. And then, of course, Trey Turner's going to continue to decline a little bit. You have to figure out where to put him later. Now's the time to do it.
Sure. Now, Bohm on the final year of his arbitration, I said at the beginning of the year, like, this is Alec Bohm's final year. There's no way they bring him back. With the Aiden Miller situation, there's kind of a dearth of third basemen that are going to be available in the next couple of years. I'm starting to think that might not be the case.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I guess it depends on the market. What's going to make sense, and I don't think we know
so
that
like
yet.
If the Phillies, if the market for Alec Bohm, so he's making what, like 14 million this year, 12 million, something like that in arbitration. If the market were $17 million a season, I think they're in.
For how many years though?
Probably 4. So like if they said 4 for 68.
Yeah, he's 10.2 this year, by the way. So it's very reasonable. 10.2 this year. That probably at least is 15.
15.
See, 15 is not a lot right now.
4 for 60. Like, I think the Phillies might be in on that. But the fans are going to be miserable about it. But like, I could see it. I could see a scenario where they get somewhere between 3 for 45 and 4 for 60, and the Phillies would definitely be in on that.
Yeah, I think if they're going to do that, they should do it sooner than later.
Oh, well, if you're going to re-sign him,
don't wait
at this point, just don't let him hit the open market.
Yeah.
But I think that he's probably going to hit the open market, and then my guess would be, I still believe that a team is going to offer him more than he's worth.
Yeah.
But I unlike in April when I said there's probably a 2% chance, there's probably like a 15 or 20% chance the Phillies are in play still.
They got to turn over some of these positions though. Like, I mean,
sure.
Just
of course they do.
But you know what? As streaky as he is, and as much as he'll make you rip your hair out at times, I mean, there's not a lot of right-handed bats out there, and he's one.
Right.
So I mean, he's better than, I'll say he's better than nothing, but I mean, I think there's he has real value when you consider how few right-handed hitters there are. So.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, if you knew Aiden Miller was coming up, it would be a lot easier. But next year's also Bryson Stott's last year, so you need and Trey Turner, you got to move him to the outfield at some point. They have a lot to figure out.
Do you think with Trey Turner? So I think we're all believe he's going to the outfield at some point. Do you think there's a stop at second base along the way?
Depends who the shortstop is. Yeah, but we don't. But depends on Escobar. Is Escobar going to stick around?
That was my timeline was if Escobar's timeline holds, does Escobar play short and Turner moves to second, or do you put Escobar at second and Turner remains at short until you move him to the outfield?
I think Escobar is a second baseman. That's my best opinion of this. I mean, he could change my mind. I mean, I don't think he wants Stott at short. I mean, you could put Stott at short. I mean, he was passable at short.
Fine.
Yeah, I mean, but I think you want better than fine at that position. I would go for defense at shortstop. Whoever the next shortstop is, I don't know who that is. I don't know who they can get. Is there a switch hitting shortstop you can get somewhere that plays premier defense?
Question, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Well, if you're going shortstop, if you're going defense and shortstop, then you need a legit bat at third.
Yeah.
Which probably plays them out of the Alec Bohm conversation we just had.
Lot to figure out. I mean, again, Bryson Stott, one more year left after this one. So, I mean, I would like to see them make some trades, try to reimagine this. But you know what? Win first, win this year, and they can always spend themselves out of it, as you said. Like a lot of this money's coming off the books.
Right. So we are just a little bit over a month away from the trade deadline. My big, because I was looking at the standings the other day. Too many teams are hovering around 500. We need one of them, 1 in 12 runs from a team to realize that they're not a playoff team. Yeah,
I think that's true. I mean, although last year the Minnesota Twins were that team. They were on the bubble, and then they decided to go all in on the selling. And what was it, like 11 players they lost from their roster?
It was a crazy amount of major leaguers.
Yeah, right now they're one of those bubble teams. They're 5 games under 500 right now. The Tigers. Here's the ridiculous thing about the Tigers. They are 12 games under the 500 mark. However, if you look at the wild card standings, you might make the case, oh, they're only 6.5 back. I mean,
Right.
this is an insane American League this year. So if you think about all the teams here's a question: would you count out the Toronto Blue Jays 6 games under 500?
I would not.
Right, and they're behind the Twins in the
Right.
standings. The Astros, who we talked about as a seller, they're 2 games under 500, but they're 1.5 out of a wild card.
Yeah, and they've said they're probably, unless something crazy happens, they're not going to sell.
Yeah, Baltimore, are they going to sell? They're 5 out of a wild card.
Baltimore's pitching is atrocious.
Yeah. Boston, 5.5 games out of the wild card.
I think Boston might sell. I think Boston might need a reset here.
I think they should sell. I mean, and their new GM just canned the manager. I think he's going to make this make this roster more in his image and likeness,
Right.
Because that's the type of GM he is. And then I said Detroit, and then really just the Angels and KC. Angels
with Detroit. I've been thinking about this for a while now. I don't know if Detroit trades Skubal, but if Detroit trades Skubal, they should also trade Framber Valdez.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to trade Skubal, you believe you're not a playoff team. And so you might as well try to get some more value out of your rotation. Because the other arm that you could conceivably move is Jack Flaherty, who you moved a couple years ago to LA, and he re-signs. And Flaherty's not been very good this year. And I know he missed some time. He's been back. He was battling injury, pitched okay in his return. But I think if you're going to trade Skubal, I would also trade Framber.
Yeah, I would make a lot of decisions in the long term if I'm the Tigers, but yeah, it's, I mean, after last year, you might feel like you're very close, and so
Sure.
you don't do a lot. I mean, I think that's the reality with a lot of these teams, and so again, talk to the AL, then you just have the Royals are in like the bottom 8.5 out of a wild card, Angels 8 out of a wild card.
I would take Michael Wacha tomorrow.
I
think if you could swing a trade for Wacha, I'm in.
Honestly, he's probably the type of pitcher the Phillies need right now. That is actually the one that I would recommend targeting, because throw him in the number 4 spot. That makes your life a whole lot easier. And and then Royals, they're kind of acknowledging that they could they could be making a move. The GM JJ Piccolo even said, like, hey, we haven't been as we expected, and but he made the comment. In fact, I'll read his quote. He said, "What do we have on this team that's going to help us next year? Where do we need to address things this offseason?" So it's kind of suggesting, like, okay, we're figuring out who's part of the future and who's not.
Sure.
Michael Wacha probably not in the long-term future, so that becomes a realistic trade target.
Well, if that's the case, neither is Seth Lugo.
Yeah, Seth Lugo is another great name, right? So I mean, those two would be really nice. I would bet you both get moved, because both are the exact types of pitchers that need to be traded if you're running your organization for the future.
Right.
And they provide real value to teams. So, I mean, but, yeah, looking on their roster, I mean, there's some, yeah. I mean, do you take Starling Marte in the deal
it's funny.
too?
I had that conversation the other day. Like, the defense is so bad.
Yeah.
I don't think
that's not that great either anymore. But yeah, I mean, you're looking down the roster. I mean, they'll probably trade would they trade Matt Strahm, free agent to be?
I don't know. Maybe
he got his ERA under 6 this week.
I don't know if anybody's gonna. I mean, you'll always take a lefty. I don't know what the value is going to be, but
yeah. But anyway, I could see Matt Strahm traded. I mean, that I think the Royals will be open for business.
Sure.
I would not take him back though.
No, I'm good. He's not pitched very well this year.
No,
he's really struggled with the long, because he's always been a fly ball pitcher, right? His ground ball numbers have been, super, super low. And it was like, how do you live like that at Citizens Bank Park? But he just pitched with brass, and he was a tough pitcher to face, trusted his stuff. And for a long time was a guy that was probably better than his stuff allowed him to be. I think starting to slow down a little bit, I think is, really struggling with the long ball.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have any interest in a return.
Yeah. So, but I would expect him to be moved
Sure.
this deadline too.
Yeah. So about a month till the trade deadline. I'm sure we're going to continue to heat this conversation up as the stove is it's preheating. It's starting to turn on now. It's not quite into a low simmer just yet. We'll continue to have the conversation. But that's just going to wrap things up for us this week. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button. And if you're not subscribed, we'd really appreciate that subscription as well. If you're listening on any of our audio-only platforms, 5-star review would be greatly appreciated as well. So for my partner, Frank Klose, I'm Tyler Zulli saying thank you so much for being a part of today's episode, and we'll talk to you next week right here on the Run It Back Podcast. See ya.